This is Greg Allison with Galactic Gregs. I promised you guys that I would show you definitive proof that the U.S. Army had, maybe still has, an anti-gravity program that ran at least 2 decades almost, and that in fact it went black. So what happened? It got interesting and then went poof. And this also ties into the mysterious disappearance of Ning Li, which we've got that solved too now. So let's go straight to it, my friends. We're going to do a share here. And here we are. This screen right here is the program. This is the, had to go the Wayback Machine to find this. In fact, this has been difficult to locate. And I lost track of my first references, but here it is. This is the actual agreement number, the actual contract from the U.S. Army Aviation and Missile Command, AVCOM, which is based at Redstone Arsenal in Huntsville, Alabama. Guys, I spent decades there working with Army and with NASA, mainly NASA. Now, this contract was awarded to AC Gravity LLD. This is the company founded by none other than the mysterious Dr. Ning Li, whom I knew. I knew Dr. Li until she disappeared. She was awarded this contract in 2001, 25 April. That was the effective date. Actually, it was probably awarded a little earlier. That was the date for it to start. It was to be completed by September 2002, and it was for $448,970. Now, this contract, well, let's read on down here. It's kind of interesting what it says about this contract. Especially, it is hoped that providing experimental confirmation of the theory to the scientific community, experimental confirmation to the scientific community will validate the theory and allow securing further funding for development of a practical application of this technology. This is crucial because she continued to work for the Army for several years after this, which suggests that they indeed did find a confirmation of this theory that she had developed and that they had, or at least were seeking a practical application thereof. So the technological objective of the effort included technologies which would be conducted by Ning Li that started, 10 years ago, as it gives kind of a historical thing where she started at the University of Alabama in Huntsville, UAH, and began working on her theoretical models. And she jointly published papers on this with Dr. Tor. I think he's mentioned here, maybe not. No, he's not mentioned in here, at UAH. And she was working on a superconducting disk to produce significant gravitational field of a certain type of magnetic field when it's externally applied, an AC field. So, going down in here, they talked about such things as making a 70-ton tank lighter, appear to weigh less. Well, the Army had to put it in Army terms, in terms of Army used and understood. Pardon me. I don't have my video editing software on this computer, so they'll have to stay in. So, in any event, this agreement has continued. Let me shrink the screen just a little bit, see if I can get better control of this, not to have to fight my. Here we go. Unfortunately, Ning Li passed away. And a lot of people think that Ning Li went to China, that she fled because things went black. They didn't hear from her. And so the stories were just too much, but they weren't true. She stayed in Huntsville. This is her obituary. And her obituary shows that she was survived by her son, Dr. George Min. And Dr. George Min is the one that gave us really the rest of the story of what happened to her, a lot of it. And I have seen pictures of her grave. She is indeed buried in Huntsville, Alabama. She never went back to China at all. As a matter of fact, what her son told us is that she continued the research and up until she had an accident. she had an accident that basically hurt her so bad that her husband saw it and had a heart attack and passed away. And she, it did brain damage to her. And the accident, I believe, was in 2014. So let's, so she continued research up to then. There's indications that her company survived a few years later. Was still doing research up to into, I believe, 2018. But anyway, her son had confirmed that actually China did come and try to woo her away, and she wouldn't go. That the members of the Chinese Communist Party went to Huntsville, Alabama, and tried to lure her back, and she did not go. She refused. And when her mom passed away, they would not allow her to go to China to her mom's funeral, which broke her heart because she had refused their offer. She was a patriot. She was very much into her work and pro-American, pro-freedom. She was a really nice lady. I knew her, really sweet. And she was really public. She liked talking about what she was doing, her work, her theories, and her work to start proving these things, which even at UAH apparently showed some reductions in the mass, the weight of the objects that she was testing. So we're going to warn that, guys. Maybe from a 0.5%, maybe even up to 2%. Anyway, this is another little article from the Wayback Machine talking about gravity research. This is from C-SPAR and CPAR, excuse me. And they're talking about gravity B probe, and they're also talking about the work at UAH by Dr. Ning Li. And she was originally funded by Marshall to some degree up through 1997. UAH funded her work, and then she started her own company. So let's go back. Let's go on some of these other articles on this. Now, what we do know is that she showed up at a MITRE conference. MITRE, the MITRE group is a group that covers defense contracts. And she went to one of their conferences, and all you can find of her presentation there is just an abstract. The actual presentation is not available because it must have been a little too interesting. This was the last public presentation she made. Now, this is some UFO site talking about this, but she was actually seen there, and I think I got this in another article, actually she was accompanied by somebody from AFCOM. So, and this was in 2003. So this program continued past that 2002 deadline. This is proof positive now, and this was her last talk. And what she apparently found was that she found they could create some kind of anti-gravity wave or energy that had 11 kilowatts of power. Now, for those that, if you want to translate kilowatts, what you need to know is that a kilowatt, if you think of watts, you've got horsepower. Now, the conversion for that is 1 horsepower is 746 watts. So 11 kilowatts is about 14 3/4 of horsepower. So almost 15 horses for whatever that's worth. What she found was non-trivial. Let's just put it that way. And that was one of her last communications. She actually sent an email. She just mentioned in a couple other sources here. Well, the last communication from her that anybody had seen was an email to her friend saying, "We've done it. We've got the 11 kW gravity field." So that is extremely significant. And then it went black. So they were on to something. Did it get better? Where did it go? That's the question. I see. Originally, she was talking about this Bose condensate of the superconductors that she was working with. The superconductors she was working with were developed originally at UAH. This YBCO, it's yttrium, barium, copper oxide, I believe, is what they were working with. It was a ceramic superconductor. And she thought originally what they were getting was strong variations in Cooper pair density. And your Cooper pair is also what I guess makes lasers cohere, and lasers, and masers, a microwave version of a laser. But she later came out saying that that wasn't the case. They had found experimentally that it had to do with the lattice ions in the structure lattice. It's like your crystal lattice. It's the structure. We can call it lattice, the lattice. It's the structure, actually, of the objects themselves and the ions in them. I'm here to tell you that space has a lattice structure. I can go more into that in the future, but anyway. So, and I think that's got a whole lot to do because space has properties. We can talk about that later. So, this is another paper. This is from the Defense Intelligence Agency. The website here, if you can see it up here, is dia.mil, Freedom of Information Act. Somebody had requested this to be released under the Freedom of Information Act. And here again, they're talking about those Cooper pairs. But let's see, they're still stuck on Cooper pairs here in this article. But this document here is a review of anti-gravity work. I don't even think this one mentions Dr. Lee, even though, yeah, it does. Lee and Tor. There we go. Lee and Tor. There's some of these articles that don't mention her. Lee and Tor doing this work. And at first, their work was, published back in 1997. It was theoretical originally. She'd come up with a theory. They'd heard from this Russian Botkinov, or however you say his name. He apparently claimed that he accidentally found the weight reduction with superconducting magnets. Here we are. This is your yttrium, barium, copper oxide. Yeah, this is what they were working with. And you can see again, this is from the Defense Intelligence Agency. So they had origin for fisher use only, which we used to call SBU. They changed the name of that classification recently. But this was released. But at this point, this was work that was still being published. So this doesn't go into non-published sources, not this article, but it does go over quite a bit of these things. So this shows that not only the U.S. Army have interest in it, Defense Intelligence Agency also had an interest in these technologies. So how about that? So we come here to another article. This is gravwave.com. You probably find this on this website, talking about the high temperature superconductors producing high frequency gravitational waves. They're talking about high frequency gravitational wave generators. And here they're saying there's two types. There's basically a type that operates lower frequency. What do they call it here? The higher frequency being 1.3 terahertz. So the gravity waves appear at that level. Now here again, they're still talking Cooper pairs. Cooper pairs. But the later papers refute that. And so she said that Ning Li had worked out the theories on this and algebra. Yeah, here he goes. She said this could generate 11 kilowatts of gravity waves power. 11 kilowatts of gravity wave power. Well, that was the Cooper pair. Apparently, they found something even better. And then it went dark. It went dark. Dark. What were they doing all those years afterwards? What were they working on? What were they doing? In her third and last paper for her mysterious disappearance, she mentioned her team demonstrated that it's really lattice ions, not Cooper pairs, that execute the coherent motion, localized motion. Okay, we heard of that's something different, because we were talking about reduction in mass. Motion requires more than reduction of mass. Well, you start getting 14 3/4 horsepower and you apply it to a small object, yeah, you might just get a little motion. So what did she find? Well, this is as far as she went. This is as far as it got. This article is now going there talking about hoverboards or something. I don't know. Well, maybe you could have a hoverboard if you ever really worked this out. This is the company that Ning Li founded in the Alabama state records. This is in the state of Alabama. That's listed as a foreign limited liability company. Now, that just means they do business outside the state of Alabama. That's all that means. It was at 511 Sparkman Drive. And for some reason, it was a Delaware corporation. That was pretty popular for tax purposes back in the day when she started this company, and to show you where this was at, Google Maps will cooperate. I don't know if I close that, it probably won't. But it was right over here, right across from basically the Bevel Center at UAH. This is University of Alabama, Huntsville, right here. All of this area right here is UAH, and a little bit more. Let's scroll it. I don't know if this would scroll, but anyway, so this is, I used to live when I was at UAH myself. My family, I lived in all family housing back over here at one time, and later back over here. Yeah, I think right about here. I think that was my apartment right there. I lived over in this area. So if you're familiar with the area, actually this, let me see here. Yeah, this would be the Bevel Center, and this would be the science buildings there, and this is the newer science building where one of the scientists went in because she didn't get the promotion she wanted or something. She took out some of her colleagues and made a lot of story. Anyway, so this journalist over here with the Huntsville Business Journal kind of got down the bottom of it. So he found this stuff. But anyway, he mentions here that her last known public presentation was in 2003 at the MITRE conference, talking about measurability of AC gravity fields, which she had been measuring. And she says federally funded research, and she was accompanied by an officer. Yeah, she presented along with a Redstone Arsenal official from the U.S. Army Space and Missile Command. So apparently it was a joint presentation. Well, we don't get to see, his name's not mentioned. We don't get to see anything else about that, other than you can find the abstract of her paper, but not the actual paper. It's been pulled, and it is not available anywhere. If you can find that, I'd like to know about it. Anyway, so this guy that published this is up here. Oh yeah, here's Ning Li. There's some of her colleagues there at UAH back before. And this is her superconducting disc here that she put weights over. She'd spin this thing up, and it was a what they call a high temperature superconductor at the time, which it's not a room temperature. You still had a liquid nitrogen to cool it, but it didn't. But it still was a lot warmer than previous papers. So a previous superconductor. So this is still a very good superconductor. Anyway, this guy went and visited George Min, and basically she let's see here. There's a couple of interesting things. A couple of quotes in there I'd like to point out if I can find them. Anyway, basically, what happened is he asked her about the anti-gravity, and she responded, "You don't know anything, and if you think you know, forget it." Basically, that's what she told him. So, so he was told to leave this topic alone because it was black. It went really black. Here's she was with Douglas Torr from UAH, and when she created that company, LLC Gravity, in 1999, and she left UAH, and the physics chairman, Department of Physics chairman from UAH, went with her. Now, were they funded for those 2 years before the Army funded? I don't know. That's a good question. How did it work? How were they funded? How did they survive those 2 years? Maybe the department chair funded it. Yeah, see, Larry Smalley departed to join with her when she created the company. 1999, she left to form her own company. So she was getting paid at UAH. And not only that, she had a staff there. One of the staff members who worked for her also supported me in my high altitude liftoff program and my high altitude research corporation I started later. And he worked with her for a while there. So they had money at UAH, and they went on, and they had to do something. You don't have a department. You don't have the chair of a university's physics department, Larry Smalley, which made a good sum of money, just leaving for nothing, right? He departed the university to join her. This is 2 years before they got the Army contract. So Gene Young was the individual I was mentioning that had worked with me and worked with her. And Gene Young had been a principal investigator on a space shuttle solar array deployment system, which was pioneered the way for the space station to deploy its large solar arrays. basically this thing folded down to a really small package in the back of the space shuttle payload bay, and folded out into space. Large solar array, just like the ones they flew on later on this International Space Station. But Jin Young pioneered that kind of work. He was a really good electrical engineer, awesome, and he was good at building stuff. And he was, he supported me in that high altitude liftoff program, which was started as an offshoot of the Huntsville, Alabama L5 Society. And here's a hal5.org article which mentions Ning Li and what happened to her, presented, and some other things. Well, we didn't know at the time what happened to Ning Li. This is Amy Eskridge. She also had a very untimely demise. She is in the earliest videos and most popular videos on this channel. Go search my videos and just search on popular most watched videos, and you're going to see. I did originally split into two videos. After she passed away, I put them into one video, which made it easier to watch, and that's the most popular video on this channel. Unfortunately, Miss Eskridge had an untimely demise, which is another topic, a whole another topic. This field is riddled with topics like, oh, we got I hate it when I start in here and get a commercial, but this is Ning Li right here in a minute, speaking at the 1997 International Space Development Conference of the National Space Society in Orlando, Florida. I chaired the 1993 International Space Development Conference, by the way. This is her. So
the word is prohibited in physical society. If everybody talk about anti-gravity, the first give idea is that you're crazy, maybe stupid.
Could you keep the mic?
And this is the way she was. That countenance there, smiling, positive. She was a really nice, sweet lady. I know.
Sorry. The anti-gravity, so we talk about it with NASA.
You can see this video on this channel right here, Space Activist Archive. Space Activist Archive. This guy here, he's actually a Facebook friend of mine. He's an old friend from the National Space Society. He went around and videotaped these conferences for years. I don't think he still does. I could be wrong. Well, he might. But he's got a lot of good videos on there. That channel deserves more watching than what it's getting. Space Activist Archive. Check that out. It's a really good, got a lot of good material in here. And if I search on popular, you'll see this is the most popular video on this channel. So you can find this video there just by searching on popular. Let me show you what else you can find. The oldest video of me on YouTube, right here. Actually, it's the oldest video of me that I can find now. 1993 ISDC opening. Yeah, I chaired that conference. You'll also find that I was at the 1997 ISDC along with Ning Li talking about my project Halo. We had I had just won the Space Pioneer Award, and for our rocket launch that we did previously in that year in May, just before this conference, and I was looking at what we were going to do next, and so that's I had the concepts for there. So that's a good fun little video to watch. Ning Li actually joined HAL-5. She came to our rocket motor test firings, or Halo project. And I'll just a little digression here. This is our project Halo, high altitude liftoff. Here we were in the back of the NASA Pearl River barge. Here we are with the one that won us the Guinness Book. That's me right there. Jin Young, I mentioned him earlier. He is behind Steve Mistakus here, unfortunately. Both these guys have passed away, Steve and Jin Young. Both have passed away. That's Tim Pickett's. He's been on this channel before. He's quite famous in the space activist area for his low-cost space development work that he's done. And oh yeah, here's another little funny article. Is Space Force being relocated to the home of transdimensional portals? Talking about, relocating the Space Force to Huntsville, Alabama, which now that Donald Trump is president again is likely to happen. But this transdimensional portals, I don't know about the portals, but I do know this. We did have a company in Huntsville, Alabama, called Transdimensional Technologies, which also did some AC gravity modification type work. And this is a paper published by Jeffrey Cameron, who was listed as the chief scientist. He didn't list himself as the president. He published this because I was the president of Transdimensional Technologies at that time. And I sold out. I sold out of Transdimensional Technologies so that I could actually go on and do some other work, which I'll show you in a minute. Now, he did some work with this power cubed concept, which he had some asymmetric capacitors and a rotary system. He was funded by Remigius Shaddis to do this. He had some work with Marshall Space Flight Center on this too. And this was a concept patented by Campbell. I think it was John Campbell. No, it can't be John Campbell. No, John Campbell was a guy's name. Sometimes different first names pop in my head. But actually, Victor Serrano was the guy who did the pioneering work on this and should have gotten the patent. Victor Serrano. I've talked to Victor. I used to have his phone on before I lost my previous phone. Victor Serrano is an interesting guy. So asymmetric gravity wave propulsion system. Here he's talking about using one of these lasers. And then he had, what was our altitude lift-up program? Hybrid rockets. So magnetic caloric hybrid rockets, beam power, photo decomposition propulsion system, and then this Odyssey concept. An aeroshell filled with helium to be the first stage of a launch vehicle, and the second stage was going to be carried by that to low Earth orbit, and this was to be launched, from a barge in the Gulf of Mexico or something like that, a laser accelerated vaporization reactor where we're basically going to vaporize liquid helium. The balloon was going to have preheated helium heated by the laser itself. I did a contract and pulled Jeff in to be the PI because the original PI moved to Europe on this contract. The contract was for a laser propulsion system, originally to look into shining a laser in a rocket. And we had a lot of problems with that, so we had to find another solution to finish the contract. It was a phase 2 SBR that we had with NASA through another previous company called Guest Associates. That's what this was the outgrowth of. So I had a hand in that, but I had some big questions about this whole thing that Jeff was trying to do. He said it was a non-conservative, you can see in the paper he published back there, non-conservative application, the Lorentz force that he was getting. I suspected, because I went to Jeff Firmage, who was one of these multimillionaires. I think Jeff was actually a billionaire. I went to his office in San Francisco to try to get funding for this project to do a flight experiment. And I was told by Jeff's guys, Firmage's guys, that he wanted to see it and run in the vacuum chamber. And I thought, well, that's simple. We build those things. We've already been using vacuum chambers. So I went back and said, Jeff, here's the exciting news. I couldn't get Jeff to do it. And Jeff talked Shaddis into buying me out of that. But and I used that money to complete my Catch rocket project here, the cheap access to space rocket. You can see my friend Bill Brown has a website here, which he got the video of this rocket, which this is a hybrid rocket launched from the ocean with a balloon, helium balloon, not a label. That's the late Lynn May Cutmore, I think. Passed away at a test of the Spaceship 2 cold flow test. We'll see the balloon here in a minute. Let's roll this up. This is the kind of stuff I used to do back. This is back in the year 2000. There's the balloon. So all this tied together because Qin Young was our electrical engineer on this. He also worked for Ning Li at UAH, not at AC gravity. This is that same balloon and rocket in space, put at the edge of space. So take it off there. All right. That's another story. Covered that. I won't go into any more, but let's look at a couple other things here real quick. Now, this is a report here. So, thing here. Talking about gravity, electrogravity force. And see, some of this work, was, the T. Townsend Brown working with others back in the 1920s, 1929. Again, most of what T.T. Brown found was actually ion wind. Most of it was. Now, there's some argument about is there some other force involved in it. So this goes in to talk about Ning Li with her electrogravity theory, and going to the MITRE Corporation. And this guy talked about the proceedings being on a CD-ROM. Well, you can't find any. This is not available, to the best of my knowledge. So anyway, so one thing that did come out that the lab at TT Transdimensional Technologies was, I need to talk about this at some length. Oh yeah, by the way, I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Oh, well, one of those articles I've just missed it. Talked about a homopolar generator as being one of the ways that you were generating some force with the back force on it. Unfortunately, homopolar generators are symmetric. I'm on the LEAK project here talking about an asymmetric homopolar generator and how you might get actually a propulsive force out of it and a means to actually have a thrust vector control. Basically, flying electrogravity device. And you can see here, I'm talking about some limits, a little bit of math up here. So I'm going to stop the share here for a second. Just talk this for a minute here. So space has properties. Space has resistance. How does nothing have resistance? Electrical engineers will tell you that, the RF guys, that vacuum space has 300 ohm resistance. How do you get 300 ohms resistance out of nothing? It's not nothing. Now here's another curiosity. The speed of light. Well, okay, free space has permittivity and permeability. Permittivity is like the capacitance, like in a capacitor of free space. And permittivity, permeability, excuse me, you can look at as being like inductance. It's magnetic, electric in a magnetic term. The speed of light in the vacuum is equal to 1 over the square root of those two terms, epsilon naught and mu naught. And that's the same form as the resonant frequency of an RLC circuit. It's R over the square root of LC. Or to put it in the same terms, CL, permittivity and permeability. That's epsilon naught mu naught equivalent. It's the same form of equation. Now, how do you get that and nothing? It's not nothing. It's really, you've got fluctuations in these fields. These other papers I showed talk about this at various lengths. I'm not going to go all into it today, but we can reserve this for a future topic to talk in more detail. But space has properties. It's those properties that allow light to propagate through it. Now, supposedly, the Moxon-Morley experiment proved that you don't have ether in space. But I've seen papers that suggested, well, what it really proved is that you don't have a DC, direct current static ether, that an alternating current ether would be permissible. So, again, we get back to these 1.3, 13 terahertz extreme high frequency fields. They're really interesting. And space, if you put tension on it, and space can be defined. Any space, any place in space, any point in space, any volume of space can be defined by a state equation. A state equation is a matrix of equations, basically are differential equations with all those curl characters in them. partial derivatives is what you'll find. And these define the field. They're called tensors, tensor equations. They define the tensions that exist in space. You can describe black holes, we don't know, but you can describe the inside of a star, a neutron star, a piece of iron, the coffee in my cup, or you can define vacuum space, all with these tensors, because there's still various forces at work. There's various fields across the cosmos. You have gravity. And, Mark Millis used to be a part of the NASA program that was looking into gravity modification, wormholes, and all that kind of stuff. He founded the TOS, I think it's called TOS Institute. Anyway, it's an institute promoting interstellar travel. But the guys, he said, well, if we had two negative masses the size of, Jupiter, we could create a wormhole. Well, that's pretty impractical to engineer and, tomorrow morning. That's the theoretical physics. The problem is gravity is not the most powerful force. The most powerful force in actuality is the Coulomb force, the electrical charge, far more powerful than gravity. And so with the right applications of electrical forces, it might be amazing what you can accomplish. Do know this. Some, your subatomic particles, like an electron, they don't ever lose energy. Protons don't ever lose energy. They're always there at the same energy level. Well, okay, they can gain or lose photons, energy as they change the shells, electron shells in an atom. But what I meant by that is they don't wear out. They continue to spin unless something gives them a boost or they give up an electron, a photon. They continue to exist without dissipation. They don't radiate their existence away like mass can, radioactive materials. So how do they do that? They are actually interfacing with this medium. And they're pulling energy from ball lightning at the macro level. May be the closest thing that if a natural phenomenon that you could think of. Ball lightning is an electro, is a plasma, and it's a toroidal shape, and it rotates, kind of like an electron. There's more to this. That gets back to my asymmetric homopolar generator. Anyway, guys, there's a lot of different ideas out there. There's a lot of stuff. Go check my videos out on Amy Eskridge's presentations. And she went through a big review on gravity. Guys, these are not jokes. These are not, a lot of people, you're talking anti-gravity, you're talking UFOs or something like that. Oh, my cat was underneath here. Sorry, kitty. I'm coming to you from what I'm affectionately calling Mars Base 1. This is the first video I produced using my computer setup in my little tiny home here in the high desert of Arizona. There you go, kitty. Anyway, you don't want to be a long-tailed cat in a rocking chair factory, right? I back my chair, but then the old cat was down there. So, guys, if you go back and look at those videos, you'll find that we have a room full of the NASA's top engineers and engineers from the community, all engineers with very technical discussions. Nobody in there is laughing. Nobody's in there snickering. They're all very seriously considering the propositions of gravity research. And, there's something been flying around. A lot of people say they see things flying around with no heat signature, no sound, no conventional movement of air. What's happening? What's behind that? So the Army had this program that, according to George Min, Dr. George Min, the son of Ning Li, continued right up until she had her accident in 2014. When she was run over, which is kind of strange. That might be a question in and of itself, but she it affected her mentally, and she basically got Alzheimer's as a result of it. I don't know if she continued to work for a little bit after that, but she continued her research up to that point, and there's some indications that company continued to work even past that point, maybe up to 2018. So if the Army found something, did they continue with it? What did they do? Remember that Livisberger who basically self-terminated in a Tesla at a truck casino in Las Vegas. He claimed that the Chinese have this technology and are launching it from submarine launched drones out in Atlantic. Now, everybody was laughing about submarine launched drones. I just did a video over on my Green Rigs channel where I just said, hey, it's a fact. The Chinese have developed a submarine launched drone. But that was the conventional ones. Or is there something more unconventional? I don't know. It could be. Could Levisberger been on something? Now, Trump just came out supposedly where he had his press secretary announce, oh, well, all these drones over in New Jersey, there were just, various research projects, all approved by the FAA. It didn't tell us anything more than what Biden administration was saying. Basically, it's like, okay, you must really be hiding something. For two administrations to come out with the same cover story after Trump said he'd get to the bottom of it, there must be something nefarious here, something strange, something interesting. It could be something totally different, but it makes you go, You can't rule out what Levisberger said, based on we do know that there are submarine launched drones that the Chinese have, and we do know that technology exists. So I'll go into in the future topic video to talk about why technology like this is potentially extremely dangerous. Maybe not, but why it may be that there's such a tight lid on it, and why in an open society like ours, the lid may have to be a lot tighter, and why that may put us at a disadvantage against the Chinese. We'll talk about that in a future video. So my friends, thank you for watching, and please subscribe, bang up the notification bell and click all, and share my videos, and I'll be bringing more stuff to you. So stay tuned. Thank you. Greg out.